In fact, we know that God allowed the suffering caused by Satan to test and improve Job's devotion and love of God. We also see that suffering in his life gives us opportunity to let others see the power of God's love and care for us. Sometimes God will allow things to happen so that we can truly be overcomers. So we can truly let others see the sufferings in our lives that we have overcome and that we have stood the test of faith and see the power of God. You know, many times I'm questioned whenever I give testimonies of everything I've been through in this life. God will say, well, you were so young, how was you able to overcome it? And I said, because I just simply trusted God. You know, there was times in my life that I doubted God. I'm not going to lie to you. There was times in my life that I questioned God. And there was times in my life I just began to cry out and I said, God, why me? But you know, somehow along the way, I mustered up enough faith to keep on going. When I didn't think there was any faith left, I still had that faith to endure. And that's what we've got to do tonight in the trials and our tribulations. We've got to have that faith to endure. So what do you say to a suffering person? You encourage them. You lift them up. Here are 10 bloopers people make at the hospital. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help. Then please wait around for the answer. Why didn't you call me and tell me what you needed? Because I couldn't get my head off the pillow. This must be God's will for your life. Did He tell you that? You know, so many times I hear people pray, if it's God's will to heal me, He will. And I quote them a verse that says we can speak both blessings and cursings in our life. Of course, it's God's will to heal you. But when you say if it's God's will, are you really trusting on God? It's God's will to heal you, people. And you've got to trust in God to get that answer. That's one of the biggest bloopers one can make. Instead of saying if it's God's will, just say God is going to heal me. Positive thinking goes a long way. I know what you must be going through. So many times people will say, I know what you're going through, when they don't. Other times they know what you're going through because what I said to you earlier, we're overcomers of our testimonies. And that's how we can reach people. Remember, time heals all wounds. I hope that isn't why time has no end. So what are your chances? Better than yours for Encourager of the Year. Instead of asking, what are your chances? Begin to pray for them. Things could be worse, and please don't elaborate on that. Yes, you can find a positive in every situation, but it's not something somebody wants to hear that's in a hospital bed. They want to hear that God can heal them. And they want you to pray for them. Look on the bright side. I would if I knew what it was. Sometimes when we go through those things, we can't see the bright side. Sometimes when we go through the valley, sometimes when we go through the trials, we can't see that light at the tunnel. But it's there. If we just trust upon God. You have the same thing my aunt had, but she died. Thank you so much for sharing that. Somebody that's sick in the hospital don't want to hear about someone you knew that died from the same thing they was in. They want you to, once again, to encourage them. They want you, once again, to tell them that they can be healed. The Bible says, by His stripes we are healed. It's so wonderful that you will see Jesus before the rest of us. Don't be so sure. You know, I'll never forget. I was too young to remember it, but my mom told me this story when I was growing up. There was someone that prophesied in the church. There was two people that had doctor's appointments, and they thought that they had cancer. One of them was my grandma, and another of them was this woman. She was in her 20s, early 30s. Her name was Sandra. She's really good friends with my mom. They're best friends. And someone stood up in the church, and to be truthful with you, they really didn't like my grandma very much. And they said, Sandra, it's going to be alright. And they prophesied this. Sandra's going to be alright. But Nellie, my grandma, is going to die. They went in to run all the tests. My grandma was healed. And Sandra died within weeks. So we're not really so sure when that time will be. But while we're on this earth, we need to follow after God. Don't listen to what other people says. Don't listen to discouraging words. But hold on to His promises until that very end. As long as you've got breath in you, if you have that faith, God can heal you. So what do you say to someone who is suffering and broken? It's not that you have answers to the questions. It's that you cared enough to come. A young preacher heard about a sudden and tragic death of a teenager in a car accident. He rushed to the home of his parents only to find them standing in the front yard next to their car. They had just arrived home from the hospital. He didn't know what to say. He said nothing. They hugged and cried together. After an hour he left, never uttering a word. He felt he had failed until several weeks later he received a card from a couple, thanking him for the comfort he had gave them that day. They thanked him for not saying anything, but for just being there and sharing their grief. It is not so much what you say to others to comfort. It's the fact that you care. Don't wait for them to tell you what to do. Just do it. There was a lady at a church I heard of when she was grieving. In a crisis would simply bring over